Good afternoon.
Hey, Carlos, this is Joe Biden. How are you, man?
Mr. Vice President, what an honor to have you here at Hispanic Communications Network speaking to our millions of listeners and readers with the important messages that you have for today. How are you?
I'm anxious to be on. Thanks for having me, and I hope you have me back.
Oh, we absolutely will have you back, sir. So let's get started. I've got a great lineup of questions here, and just really excited to hear about just your personal insights on the trip that you're coming back from. Specifically, I know you had a chance to talk with the three main presidential candidates in Mexico, and could you just share with me your impressions?
Absolutely. Look, this is when we first got elected, the president asked me to head down to Central America to meet with the Central American presidents in 2009. I also went to Chile early in 2009 to meet with the presidents of the major countries in South America, the largest countries, and because we believe this relationship in the hemisphere is so critical in multiple ways, including to our mutual economic benefit and the growth of our economies. But I started off in Mexico, and I had a great series of conversations with President Calderon, who was a great friend, and I had an opportunity to meet with the three candidates for president. As you know, the election is coming up soon, and we discussed everything from citizen safety to economic growth, trade, and immigration. And it was a very, very useful trip. And it just reinforced for me how close we become, how much closer we become with our friends in the hemisphere, and particularly in Central America and Mexico.
Great. Mr. Vice President, did you get assurances from some of those presidential candidates that they are not going to slow down the fight against the cartels, or do you think we'll expect some changes in their current strategy?
Well, I didn't have to ask for assurances. Each of the candidates from the three major parties, each of them started off the conversation assuring me that they were as committed as Calderon was to dealing with the drug cartels, organized crime, strongly indicating they hope our continued help, which has been substantial, would continue. And there was slightly different emphasis coming from each of the three candidates, but fundamentally, no directional change. And I guess the reason, I'm speculating now, the reason that each of them started the conversation before I asked them is the speculation in the American press that somehow there'd be a change in policy depending on who got elected. And they reassured me without asking. And what I reassured them of was that we will honor and look forward to working with whomever the people of Mexico decide to be their next leader. There's been a real change in the relationship in my years as a United States Senator and Vice President. We used to talk about what we could do for Central America and Mexico, and now we talk about what we can do with, how we can jointly work together. And so it was very, very, we then went on to talk about the economy, economic growth. We talked about and our mutual interests that are not only regional, but also worldwide. Mexico has been a great partner with us at the United Nations, a great partner with us in fighting terrorism, a great partnership with us beyond our borders. I mean, it's been very, very, it was a very useful trip, and I think it's in pretty good shape, the relationship.
That's great. And I'm sure it's no surprise to you, and I hear this quite frequently, I'm sure you do too, but the violence in Mexico related to this drug cartels is often tied to the demand, especially we hear from the Mexican press reports and oftentimes here, but they tie it to the demand of illegal drugs here in the U.S. What do you think should be done here domestically? What are we going to do to fight demand on this side?
Well, hopefully we're going to do even more and get more cooperation from our friends in the United States Congress on this. But the President and I, and as you probably know, Carlos. For years, I was the Democratic point person on drug policy in the United States Congress. I wrote the first several national drug strategies in the Congress, working with Democrat and Republican administrations, everything from setting up the drug czar to significantly greater emphasis on prevention as well as treatment. And we did talk about this, and I pointed out that the United States has made significant progress in terms of violent crime in America associated with and without drugs. Violent crime is down significantly since the passage of the crime bill and our efforts passed in this administration. And secondly, we talked about how we have devoted a considerable amount of our resources to treatment and rehabilitation, prevention and treatment. And so we had a long discussion, including with the Central American presidents, who gave me a great deal of their time, about how we in the United States have been able to actually impact on drug consumption. Since I first got involved in this issue as a fellow in the Congress who was in charge of the criminal justice committees, the amount of consumption in the United States has dropped by a third. We have a long way to go, but from the late 70s to now, consumption in America of illegal drugs has dropped by 1/3. The other thing we did talk about, Carlos, is and the Mexicans as well as the other Central American presidents we met with, is there's never been a country that has been a transit country for drugs or a producing country that hasn't become a consuming country. And it's an increasing problem for our friends in Central America as well as in Mexico, the increase in consumption in country. And so they asked me a fair amount about the kinds of things that we have put in place in order to deal with the consumption in our own countries. So there was a wide-ranging discussion, and the thing that I found most encouraging about it all, it was completely, totally, how can I say, collegial. There was no accusations. I remember years ago when I was involved with the Andean drug plan and helping draft that in the Colombian plan. When I first went to Colombia in Bogota back in the late 70s, and I got a very stern lecture from then the president of Colombia and members of their assembly about this was all a U.S. problem. It had nothing to do with them. And I remember saying then that if you don't deal with production here, you're going to become a consuming state. And we've had enormous cooperation with Colombian presidents, this one and previous presidents going back to Pastrana, that have borne real fruit. So it was in the nature of a much broader discussion that we had rather than, look, this is a U.S. problem. If it weren't for the United States, we wouldn't have any problem.
Agreed.
It was much broader than that.
That's great. I have one more important question to our over 15 million Hispanic listeners and readers. They're very interested in learning what the policies and initiatives that the White House is proposing or implementing to benefit our Hispanic communities. And we'd love to just hear from the heart from you. Could you just speak directly to them and tell us what you're planning on doing?
Well, I can, Carlos. Look, maybe, it's interesting how Americans, and particularly commentators who are not part of an identifiable community, whether it's the African American community, the Hispanic community, the Asian community, the Jewish community, the Muslim community, they do something that, as an Irish American, offends me. They assume that those of us who share a common heritage only have a single-minded purpose. We are single-issue people. What always offends me is when you see anybody who identifies themselves as Hispanic American, the first thing is politicians will say, let me tell you my position on immigration.
Right.
That is critically important. but it is much larger than that. And what we have focused on is how do we improve the lives of all Americans, and particularly in this case of Hispanic Americans who have been badly, badly, badly damaged by this god-awful recession we inherited, by the unfair laws that exist in some of our states, and so what we focused on is how do we change the lives and the lot of the Latino, the Hispanic community. And that's one of the reasons why we work so hard to get comprehensive health care reform. It brought health care to millions and millions of Hispanic Americans who were among those least covered by insurance coverage. We have focused extensively on housing, and we focused on the economy overall relating to jobs, and look at all the effort we put into education. In healthcare, there are 9 million uninsured Hispanics will benefit. In education, there are 60,000 Hispanics who've been added to the Head Start program, and we all know that early education is the single most vital component in predicting whether or not a child will succeed educationally. Hundreds of thousands of Hispanics are getting Pell Grants. You know, we have increased from 6 million to 9 million young women and men in America who are in college today as I speak because of the efforts of our administration adding on to the Pell Grants in terms of number and the number of years that it covers. And that included, so right here, I'm talking to you from Florida, right here in the state of Florida, there are thousands of Hispanics going to school now because of Pell Grants. I could go on, but it is, so what we have done is we have tried to generate economic growth as well as healthcare opportunities and education opportunities that give people a chance to expand the pie. This is about a level playing field. And the president and I mean what we say when we say that the single biggest determinant in our view of whether or not we will have been successful, whether it's after 4 years or 8 years, have we expanded access to the middle class, and have we increased security that once you're in the middle class, you will make it. And that is, I would argue, maybe the single most important thing anyone can do for the Hispanic community. And then with regard to immigration reform, which is critically important, we remain as committed as we were the day we took office to comprehensive immigration reform. We have taken individual actions where we can, under the executive authority of the president, absent the cooperation of the United States Congress and the other party, to be more family oriented. Look, this is all about families. This is all about opportunity. This is all about giving people a fair treatment. You know, there's a young woman. I'm in Miami. A young woman who is the valedictorian of her class here in Miami in high school, and she was on the list to be deported. I believe sometime in March. Now this is a kid graduating #1 in her class. It is absolutely mindless for us to have a policy that says young women and men, young Hispanics. She was brought here, I'm told, when she was 4 or 5 years old. Why in God's name is it in the interest of any American to deport that beautiful young child with such great intellectual potential? We should be doing everything in our power to get people who have that kind of potential to come here, and those who are here to stay here. That's why the president and I are so insistent on, if we can't get these guys to do comprehensive reform, at least, for God's sake, pass the DREAM Act. Pass the DREAM Act. All Americans understand that. Every American from any immigrant background, whether it's a generation ago or 5 generations ago, they understand that's how this country was built. It's the lifeblood of the country. When I was recently with the president of the future president of China, the vice president of China, a country heading toward 1.3 billion people, and he was asking me about trying to understand us. And I said, you have to understand, this President Xi, I said, Vice President, Mr. Vice President, you have to understand, we are a nation of immigrants, and that's from which our power flows. It's that new blood. It was interesting to watch him. It was interesting to watch his reaction to that. I think he fully understood why we're so committed to human rights, why we're so committed to opportunity. It's about this new blood. And I think the American people are way beyond our critics when we say that it's time. It's just time, long overdue. So there's a great deal that we are doing, but let me put it another way. I think the question we should be asking ourselves, look what the Hispanic American community has done for America, not what we're going to do for them. Look what they have already done. I spend a lot of time, as you know, Carlos, overseas, and I was put in charge of Iraqi policy of responsibly ending that war. And on two occasions, there have been two of the half a dozen highlights of my career. On the 4th of July, and with my wife Jill, I think she's one of the few second ladies ever been into a war zone. She came with me the last time on the 4th of July in Afwa Palace, this god-awful, gaudy palace built by Saddam Hussein. And I got the chance, Carlos, to stand there. It was moving. Before over 200 men and women in uniform. Some already have received the Purple Heart, some with bronze stars, some decorated, some wounded. And not a single one of them was an American citizen. And the vast majority were Hispanic Americans who had served their country. 600 have died. Over 2,700 or 800 have been wounded. And I got to swear them in as American citizens. They've already done more than almost any American today. Only 1% of America is engaged in these wars. And I got to stand there, and you should have seen the looks on their faces, the pride they had. And I just wish every American could have seen it. So I don't think we should just be asking, what are we doing for Hispanic Americans? I think we should be pointing out to people, look what Hispanic Americans have done and are doing right now for the United States of America.
That's wonderful. And I know that on behalf of the millions of listeners and readers that we have, Mr. Vice President, we're honored and we're very pleased with the progress that you're making. And we will be monitoring, we will be watching, and we will be supporting all of the great policies that support our community, and also speaking proudly about the work that we do, and these such powerful examples that you just gave me about our involvement in the way we give back to U.S.
Well, you
society.
should be proud, old buddy. And I have one apology
Thanks.
to all your listeners. I truly regret I cannot speak Spanish. I think I'm joking. I sincerely mean it. I've tried several times in my home state, which has a growing Hispanic population, to actually address them in Spanish. The thing I love about them, I mangled it and they cheered for me.
There you go. Well, listen, I'm 3 blocks away from the White House. I'm just down the street in the studios. You're welcome to come by anytime, and we'll give you a few phrases here that'll help you back
All
in
right,
Delaware.
man. All right. Thanks
All right.
an awful lot, Carlos.
Hey, thank you. It's been great.
All right, bye-bye.
Take care.